Let me read to you a passage from the 7th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 11 to 17. It's the Gospel for Tuesday of the 24th week of Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, "Soon afterwards, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, 'Do not cry.' Then he went up and touched the bier they were carrying him on, and the bearers stood still. He said, 'Young man, I say to you, get up.' The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. They were all filled with awe and praised God. 'A great prophet has appeared among us,' they said. 'God has come to help his people.' This news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country." That's from Luke chapter 7, verses 11 to 17. Let's think of that event and our Lord saying, "Do not cry," to the poor widow. You know, that there is a great deal that happens in life which is not to one's liking is, to say the very least, an understatement. Years ago, a prominent Australian politician famously said that life was not meant to be easy, and he was pilloried in the press for his observation. Much in life is very difficult, and some things are appalling. There is famine, disease, and above all death. There is loneliness, frustration, and seeming lack of point in many things that happen. Some decide that as God is normally defined, one who is almighty and all good, he could not exist. If he did exist, things would not be as they are. Many do not bother with the question. When faced with life as it is, the thought of God is for them an irrelevancy. God is far removed from their real concerns, which are to make ends meet and to cope with a difficult life. He may exist, but he is no help. A young couple have their infant son, the joy of their life. Suddenly, he is run over by a car and killed. The light has gone from their lives, and what use is it to talk of God? He is no help at all. Death is the preeminent human problem, and whether God exists or not, he makes no difference to that. One cannot live in the expectation that God will do something useful, and so life must be lived as if he did not exist. Will he say, raise the dead or stop the deterioration of one's life? Of course not. The typical man or woman of the modern secular culture grieves when tragedy strikes, but he knows he must then get on with it, using his best wits to harness life, nature, and the world. It is impractical to expect much of God. In view of this common experience, it is a moot question for many what kind of reality God is anyway. What is God? Well, who cares? He is of no help in the big things, nor really in the little things. The world is the one fact that one has to deal with in life, and it has its own laws which man must respect or else. I suspect that it is this assumption that the world is the most substantial thing that there is, which fosters the modern prejudice against, say, the miracles of the Gospels, and miracles anywhere else. Miracles are unbelievable and a side issue. The main game is the world and its laws. That's what's thought. In our Gospel today, tragedy has struck an elderly woman and perhaps many others in the village. There is no question in their case of any rejection of God. In a mass sense, this is a modern phenomenon. Death has struck, and it is the only son of a widow. He is there, being carried out on a bier to the cemetery. Nothing more can be expected, and very little for the poor widow who has several years of difficulty and loneliness ahead of her. When Lazarus died and our Lord arrived at Bethany several days later, Martha said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." No one was present to prevent the death of the son of the widow of Nain. The body was being carried out for burial when Jesus appeared on the scene. What followed was a revelation of how God views the situation. He views it with the utmost compassion, and he shows that he is a help after all. It is entirely wrong to think that God may exist, but he is of no help. When the Lord saw her, we read, his heart went out to her, and he said, "Do not cry." Then he went up and touched the bier they were carrying him on, and the bearers stood still. He said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Luke chapter 7, verses 11 to 17. The miracles of Jesus Christ as portrayed in the Gospels are obviously not meant to show what God will always do in the face of difficulty and death. Our Lord did not raise from the dead every person who died during his public ministry. He raised a few, and he did this to reveal the reality and nature of God. God is all-powerful and all-loving. He looks on our sufferings and deprivations with the utmost compassion, and the few miracles that occur are windows into his attitude and nature. They show us that if we obey him patiently, he will resolve all things wonderfully in the fullness of time. More, it shows our Lord's limitless power to do what is the most important thing of all, to raise us up from sin and to place us in his grace. This grace of God is a present share in the life of God, grand, indestructible, eternal. God is our help, but we must be patient. In all difficulties we must cling to Jesus Christ, his Son. If Jesus Christ spontaneously felt immense compassion for the widow of Nain and proceeded to restore her son to her, then despite all appearances he has good things in mind for all who suffer. He feels the same immense compassion for all who suffer that he felt for her. He will do good things for them just as he did good things for her. When he will do it is not for us to say. What he will do is not for us to say. As St. Paul writes, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him." 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9.